We are the Orcs, and we have a plan.
To watch all of Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica.
And drink beer.
Hello, friend.
Hello.
Welcome to Borgcast Galactica 3.7 with Peter and Anne-Marie. We have some
previously on Battlestar Galactica.
For we have heard from Daria on the episode Flesh and Bone.
Hello, Daria.
Evening, Orcs. Daria here. Sorry I missed the last couple. The world kind of got in the way there. I gather in the interim, Zach died in the past. They brought back old Richard Hatch. Starbuck was in a Galactica 1980 rerun, and we had some McCarthyism. But tonight we're going to feedback on Flesh and Bone. I'm always a little bit off when I see characters having arty dreams of portent like Laura Roslin is here. I don't know, it's just never been my thing. Speaking of, does she have a vice president? Because it really seems she could use one about now. Starbuck and Adama, nearly called him Obama. Starbuck and Adama obviously very much disrespect this Cylon chap because they're not even using the right pronouns for him. That's just very bad form. Maybe he should wear a badge. Can we just take a moment to talk about the title sequence on these? It would have been so easy to go for the usual quasi-orchestrated SF music with majestic starship shots. Instead, these slow strings let you know that this isn't going to be all laser guns and jetpacks. And the imagery, people are dead, they're going to keep on dying, and you're going to feel it. We kick up that mood with a bit of enhanced interrogation from our supposed heroes. After his opinion of the tribunal last week, I was surprised Commander Adama would allow any such thing on his Battlestar. But, of course, as far as he's concerned, the Urban's not a people. Starbuck can do what she likes to appliances, even appliances who, despite being from a far-off civilization and age beyond us, wear incredibly 90s shirts. I honestly thought Roslyn was going to clutch her presidential pearls as she saw all that, but she just has no time for the Urban shit, does she? Does she believe what he said about Papa Adama being a Cylon? He's already spun a lie about a nuclear bomb for the past 8 hours, and she just said that all he does is spread discord, but I guess there's that little part of her that just can't be 100% totally gold sure. She's not in what you might call a comfortable, trusting environment. I liked the episode, but it kind of felt like the actors wanted to cut looser than they did in the torture interrogation scenes. Maybe even this show can only go so far. Oh, and Hilo and Capra Boomer had sex and had to run away. Okay, so long as they're keeping busy.
Thank you, Daria.
Thank you.
Good point about vice president. I'm not sure if that comes up later on, but it hasn't come up yet, has it?
She hasn't got one at the moment,
because
she was the lowest ranking, wasn't she? So
there must be an even lower ranking person to her, somewhere.
Well, no, I don't think there was. I think what I could.
Well, they didn't say that she was the lowest ranking. They just said that she was very low ranking.
Very low ranking. So there could be someone in theory, but
a ranker. Sorry, I've had a lot of whiskey.
Who ranks as high as any in Rome.
As Rome, yes.
Yes. But it's also genuinely entirely possible that there isn't anyone else.
Well, there doesn't appear to be yet. So we shall see.
Yeah, we'll see. I do love your Freudian slip between Obama and Adama.
And Starbuck can do what she likes to appliances, apparently.
For now.
Well, indeed. And he had 90s shirts. That shirt was appalling.
It was.
That was a John Nathan Turner cast-off, that was. Yeah, I probably ought to explain at this point that I've got a cold, as you may tell from my voice, and so tonight has been fueled by whiskey, which probably wasn't the best of plans for podcasting, so if at some point I just go very silent and Henry takes over, I've fallen asleep.
Or equally, if he suddenly gets giggly and weird.
Yeah, that's quite possible too. Yes. But thank you, Daria.
You've got very high pitched.
I know. Oh, it's going to be a long night. Anyway, let's move on to our first episode for this evening. Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down.
Yeah.
Permission to come aboard, sir. Granted. Mind telling me where the hell you've been? Colonel Tigh, allow me to present your wife. Ellen.
So originally going to be called Secrets and Lies. Well, that makes most difference, but and it was going to be based on. I've not seen Crimson Tide. Have you seen Crimson Tide?
Isn't that some shark shit?
No, it's about a power struggle on a submarine.
No.
No. Okay. Anyway, so
I now want to see Crimson Tide.
yeah, I think it probably ought to actually. It's got Gene Hackman in it, and I do like a bit of.
Can I watch
that
that now?
Well, not now, clearly, because we're podcasting. That would be
No,
distracting.
find it. We watch.
Anyways, so the idea was that the entire episode was going to be about a power struggle between Adama and Tigh, with both suspecting the other was a Cylon. It didn't quite work out that way, as we'll find out.
Yes.
Do you know who directed this one?
Yes, Edward James
Yeah,
Olmos.
Eddie himself. Yes.
Yeah. So you can see Roslin and CNC. You have a weird opening shot that reminds me of Discovery because it starts from a weird angle.
Yes, there is a little bit
Yeah,
of that.
isn't there? And what's interesting is that when we very first started watching, the volume wasn't quite high enough. So I misheard this as the prisoner is waiting for you in the core. And I spent quite a lot of time watching and waiting for the prisoner and then realised I'd misheard and it was the president is waiting for you in the core.
Dull.
Sorry. And you get this clear the deck, which I think is so that he can have a private conversation with the president.
Mm-hmm.
You find out that the Cylon detector works, in inverted commas, as in they think it does. And so people in sensitive positions has to go first. That's fine, that makes sense. And Roslin's like, well, how about you? And Adama's just like looking at her like, the what now?
Yeah.
And the thing is, what she says makes complete sense. He has the most power. Militarily, he has the most power. The problem is the way she says it.
Yeah.
Makes it bloody clear that actually...
It's so awkward, isn't it? And and you just know it's because of what Leoben said in the previous episode. Yeah.
Whereas if her body language and her voice and her mannerisms were different, she could be saying the same words and he would respond differently.
Yes.
Because...
She even does that weird nervous laugh thing.
She does. She does. And she just looks jittery. I mean...
It's like when he says, well, if I'm a Cylon, you're fracked. And she's like...
Yeah. Note, whisky, high-pitched laughter already. Just saying. It's just... I love the way they've done this scene. In other words, they could just do the dialogue on the page. Yeah, and it would work because what she's saying is true, but the two actors are playing off of each other, and they therefore deliver so much more than just the words on the page, which I just really liked it as a scene. And then you have Dee and Billy on the observation deck, and they're watching Vipers fly by.
Yeah, there aren't generally windows on the Galactica, unlike the Enterprise. Which isn't a battleship after all. Yeah, the Galactica's supposed to be all super secure and able to withstand attack, so it doesn't make any sense for there to be windows. Except they felt like one window would be a good idea, and then suddenly there'd be queues of people to be able to look out the window. I don't mind that. I can buy that.
Yes, well, that fits with... I know it comes later, but it's still the same sort of concept. Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series, that all the pods have a window where you can look out, and how important it is if you're in cramped submarine-type conditions, as you are on a spaceship, to be able to see out to something bigger, to feel less claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. But there's a sort of will they, won't they, sort of... Dee is like, because Billy's like, is this the day? Dee's like, I'm not sure. And then she decides to kiss him. And then he fucking does pump her for information. And then she's like, are you pumping me for information? He looks a bit awkward. And she's like, yeah, you are. That's what you're doing. And so he finds out that Obama's been... I've done it now. I've done Adaria. I said Obama. I meant Adama. It's infectious. Adama has been making these odd calls with no log. Rosalind's sitting there and Billy's like, hang on, you realise what you're saying? You are saying that Adama might actually be a Cylon. Can you he's kind of saying, can you hear yourself, kind of thing. And then you've got Gaius in his lab, and he says he's got 47,905 blood samples to test, and he's working out how long it's going to take and all the rest of it.
Yeah, he's listening to an opera, which is in Italian, which is interesting, and translated apparently is about how he's doomed because of his love for a toaster in high heels.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
That's attention to detail.
Nice.
I love the zooming out over all the many test tubes. It's like you kind of, it gives you a sense of his despair.
Yeah. And then it's, what's his job if he doesn't have his perks? And then he starts fantasising about sex. And I actually said while I was watching this, oh, bloody hell, who's going to come in?
Now? And why does he never lock that damn door?
Oh, because he's got his trousers down and he's having a wank, and then Starbuck comes in and he's just...
It's awkward.
She's like, he says I'm doing my exercises. I'm just like, no. There is no right thing to say you just say nothing.
Yeah. Did you not find... I find the comedy music a bit too much in a lot of these scenes, including this one. It's a bit too on the nose.
I didn't in this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect that's because I bloody well saw it coming. Do you know what I mean? Later on with Ellen, yeah. Because actually...
Laid on a bit thick, isn't it?
Well, it's not just that, but I found it cringeworthy rather than funny.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whereas this is funny.
Yes. Boltar and comedy works well.
Yes.
Yes.
Ellen, not so
Ellen
much.
and the other characters, you don't associate with Dharma with comedy, for instance,
No.
and Apollo. It just doesn't quite work somehow.
So this one scene, for me, not a problem.
Yeah.
But you're right, overall, no. And then you've got Tigh pouring whiskey away. You got upset at that.
Yeah.
And holding his new photo.
Yes, and the same in the recap as well,
Yeah.
reshot, so that, because originally it was the wife of David Icke, the producer, that was her picture that he was boring a hole in, but of course she wasn't actually an actor, so when they came to deciding they wanted somebody to actually play Ellen Tigh, they had to find an actor, and therefore took a picture and redid it.
Yeah. And then you have a raider appears.
Mm.
It's been spotted, and they zap it, so it's been damaged.
Yes, they being... You pick up who these were?
The Nuggets, were they?
It's Apollo, and the other one has the... You never see them, but the other one has the call sign Beehive. So I'm just imagining somebody with a mighty hair do at this point. Oh, Beehive.
Oh, God. Okay, the hairdo, right. Apollo manages to fire at it to get its weapon systems. It's got damaged, and it can't fly away. So the idea is, right, if it's in the air, we can potentially gather some info here. And then Adama lands, and he's got Colonel Tigh's wife, Ellen.
I love the way she's introduced. So it's a wonderfully shot scene. I mean, Eddie Olmos is clearly a really good director. The Raptor comes in.
I love the way the Raptor comes in.
And the camera pans round, and all you see of the passenger is a red dress, leg, and high heels, and you're thinking, "Oh, is it a number 6?"
Yeah.
But it's not. No, it's Ellen Tigh, played by Kate Vernon, who was in Voyager and Prelude to Axanar. They'd originally hoped to get Xena's Lucy Lawless for the part.
Okay.
See later episodes for more on her. But I think Vernon's brilliant.
She is.
I mean, she's cringeworthy.
But
she's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Yes. That you would not want to spend any time in her company whatsoever.
No.
She plays it so well.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, Moore made the point they couldn't have another returning next to kin because it would get silly at that point, wouldn't it? But they're allowed one, and she's the one.
Yeah. And then you're back on Caprica, and I'm sorry, but this just took me out of it. This Centurion's running, they just look wrong.
Yeah, it's not great graphic. The Centurion effects have not aged well.
I couldn't tell you what's wrong with it.
They just don't look real, is the problem with it. Not properly in the scene.
The running is somehow wrong.
Yeah, the movement is wrong, but also the realisation is wrong as well. It just doesn't quite work. This is not obviously the earliest days of CG. You're looking at Babylon 5 for that, but still, it's not. If they were making the series now, I'm sure it'd be a lot more polished. Yeah. But yeah, it's looking its age, sadly.
Whereas most stuff doesn't. If you see what I mean, in terms of in this series, most of the spaceship stuff.
Spaceship effects mostly okay. Sometimes the Raiders look a bit ropey, but yeah. Most of the more mechanical stuff looks fine.
But this, I think it might be just one of those things that because...
well, the thing is that with the spaceship shots, it's all CGI.
Yeah.
With the stuff with the Centurions, they're compositing them into a live scene.
And so there's something
and
that you're picking up on. Yeah.
It's not a deal breaker, don't get me wrong. But
but it's rare for effects to pull me out because I don't have much depth perception, so a whole load of effects that other people might notice I don't, if you see what I mean. This I did. And then Sharon's like, no, they're after me, so we got to run. And he's like, why are you after me? She said, oh, I overheard stuff. You know, She says there's a base at Delphi, and of course, because she's the silent herself, she knows. And then Rosalind, because she's like all freaking about Adama, she rings up Gaius. I want you to test Adama. And then he's like, well, I was given this other sample. And she doesn't actually say, fuck the other sample. She's just like, no, I want you to test Adama. And then you find out that, because he was going to be testing Ellen. And what's interesting is that Ellen doesn't remember how she got on the Rising Star. She doesn't remember.
I don't remember. I don't recall. I got no memory of anything at all. I don't remember. I don't recall. I got no memory.
Yeah, there's a tune.
Nice. And it's one of those things that you're automatically suspicious, is she a Cylon plant? But on the other hand, she says she was in a coma. Now, if she was, she wouldn't remember, would she? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things that it's not... It could be true.
Yeah,
and you
just
can
about.
and you can understand why Tigh believes her. Do you know what I mean? And then, I love this. Rosalind summons Tigh and says, what about this, what about that? And he's like, I know exactly where he was. He was finding my wife. Her name's Ellen. And you can just see that,
Ellen.
Shit!
Oh.
Look. So, of course, she then rings up and goes, yeah, you know that Ellen sample? I think you
Get back to it. You know, it's
Yeah.
a prop art. I was like, what?
Yeah. And then you've got Ellen saying to Tigh, oh, have a drink with me, have some ambrosia, Devon custard.
Hey, it's back from the original series and greener than ever before, apparently.
Oh, it looks like absinthe.
It does.
Mank.
Yeah, would explain why they get so drunk so quickly.
Yeah, but it just tastes of fucking toothpaste. It's horrible. Don't like it. It's wrong. Yeah, and they're getting drunk together even though he's on duty. And the thing is, later on there's a scene where he's like, yes, I was drinking, I was celebrating, I think I deserve to. And you're like, yeah, actually, you know what?
Yeah, maybe book the day off. I don't know how that works, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how... Well, he didn't know because Adama hadn't told him.
Yeah,
Life was
but, you know,
coming out,
say,
could he?
I'm going to take the rest of the day off.
Yeah, should have done. But anyway, maybe you couldn't. I don't know. And then you have the meal, and I love the meal. It's brilliant because Rosalind fucking hates being there, and you can just tell she hates Ellen.
Yeah.
And she's just like, yeah. And it's all, oh well, quite a lot of people were upset about a kindergarten teacher taking over as president. And you're like, oh, that old prejudice is back again then, is it? And she's like, yeah. And then you've got Ellen playing footsie with Lee, who at one point has to just suddenly get up from the table and say,
Yeah,
the dishes
Jamie
away.
Bamber apparently didn't know she was going to do that.
Oh, so that's a real reaction.
The look on his face,
oh,
like, what
bloody
the hell?
hell.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's properly awkward. Now, I like the fact that it's awkward. To me, that's real. Mm-hmm. But I don't like the music.
No, the music is too broad, isn't it?
Because, to me, the fact they're all awkward is good, but it isn't funny.
No. It ought to be... Yeah, the music is trying to make it funnier than it actually is.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah.
If I were in that room, and that's how I feel in that scene, as though I'm in that room, it's tense.
The actual... The running core of it is, this woman is really bad for Tigh.
Yes.
And brings out the worst in him, and the suspicion that she might be a part of the Cylon plan even comes out of that. You know, it's the way she integrates herself into it all. So actually that's quite serious.
Yeah.
So to just put the comedy slapstick music over it all, because there are comedy moments, that's fine, but it just ruins it slightly. It kills any suspense that it might actually have. I mean, there are some wonderful moments. There's one point where... Oh, it's a bit later on where both Tigh and Adama look at the screen at the same time. It's really wonderfully timed. There's wonderful comedy timing. It's just the music, I don't know, it just doesn't suit it for this episode. Which generally, I like Bear McCready's music for the series. Don't get me wrong, I'm not down on him generally, but just in this episode, it's not good.
Although, that said, there are differences between British and American humour, and it would be interesting if we've got any American feedback as what they make of this.
Uh-huh.
And B... I don't like cringe humour. Yeah. To me, it's all cringe and no humour.
Yeah, you like stuff like The Office. Yeah, just can't put up
you
with.
like more than me because you'll watch Cheers, and a lot of Cheers is too cringy for me.
But even I have my limits. Yeah.
Right, but there are clearly people who like The Office and who like the cringe humour. Maybe for them, the music works.
Yeah.
But for me, it never was going to. And actually, it's interesting that it doesn't for you either, given that there's stuff that I find too cringy to watch, but you will.
Yeah, I was I have my limits even. And just
but
oversteps the mark somewhat.
Over the line!
For me, it does massively, because for me, that's all cringe and no humour. Now, that for me doesn't mean that the writing's bad or the acting's bad or anything like that.
Just out of interest, how are you on Faulty Towers?
It depends. For me, the stuff mostly with Basil... He's funny because he's just so inept, and I find that hysterical
because that could be quite cringy.
But what I don't like is his wife, whose name I can't remember. And basically, she actually knows what she's doing. And you're supposed to laugh at her. Or you're supposed to sympathise with his reactions to her when her reactions are all completely normal because he's clearly a useless fucking idiot. And all my sympathies are with her. So the stuff around her I find it realistic, but I don't find it funny. The stuff around him, I find it funny because he's just so spectacularly inept. And John Cleese plays it that way. It's supposed to be that way. So most of it is funny. But there are bits that I don't find funny. The other thing that I don't find funny now is basically the racism towards Manuel. Oh, he's Spanish.
Yeah, that hasn't aged well, has it? No.
But for example, one of the scenes I love is when he gets really cross with his car.
That is my favourite scene ever. Yeah.
Starts attacking it with half a tree. That's amazing. I love that. And there's another episode, and I can't remember what the plot is. But
Sybil. Bruno
The-
Scales.
There's another episode, and I can't remember what the plot is, but it involves at various points a very large basket, and in the end, he effectively decides he has to run away, and he gets in the basket. And
Yes.
that I also find
Yeah,
really funny.
so it's funny because I remember as a kid absolutely loving Fawlty Towers, but as I grow older, I find it a bit more too much on the cringe scale.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a massive diversion. We're supposed to be talking about Battlestar Galactica,
Sorry.
not Fawlty Towers, but that was completely my fault and the fault of this whiskey.
That's okay.
Damn fine whiskey, but it is the fault of the whiskey.
Yes. What I like is you've then, in amongst all this chaos, got Ellen going, where's Earth and how do we get there? And that immediately makes me think, maybe she is the Cylon.
You know, there are big,
You know what I mean?
there are, all the while through this episode, there are big pointy arrows saying, hang on a minute. She's been sent to sow dissension, hasn't she? You know?
Yeah. And then you've got Adama going, yeah, I'm not saying that. Any one of us could be a Cylon. And it's like, that's quite recent news. How do you know?
Yeah.
You know, it all travels fast, whatever. And then they all get really, really stressed. And this I love. And this did make me laugh. She suddenly goes, boo! And I
Yes.
love that.
That was brilliant.
Laugh. That was so funny.
And I love Apollo's comment as they're leaving. It's like, could she really be a Cylon agent? Well, if she isn't, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Then on Caprica, Halo is near drowning and he can't keep up.
Did you catch where they're heading for, by the way?
Delphi, wasn't
Yes, which is another reference to the original series.
Is it?
Yes.
Ah.
It was a planet that the Cylons had taken over.
Oh, okay.
It was now Gamora.
Oh,
And the sun hits your... That one,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Yeah, it was Delphi in that, yeah.
But Delphi is a Greek reference, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So Sharon climbs up and looks out to see what's going on.
Oh, yes. The Shaun of the Dead moment.
Yes.
That moment when Shaun goes up the children's slide to see if the coast is
I
clear.
love that.
Is the coast clear? No.
Oh shit, no, that ain't gonna work. She's like, I'm not gonna die, I won't let you die, come on. But this is another sign that by this time you would think that Hilo would have picked up on the fact that even though she's been beaten up and he hasn't, she's...
Well,
carrying
I'm
on.
sure he's already commented at this point, where do you get all your strength from? Because, you know, she's just clearly showing superhuman strength at this point,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And the thing is, women do have more stamina than men. Less strength as a rule.
It depends what they've rolled at the beginning of their fighting fantasy adventure. Sorry.
Women do generally have more stamina than men, but less speed. But...
I am not going to make any comment on that whatsoever.
Fine. My point, though, is that she's supposed to have had the crap beaten out of her.
Mm.
So you're not comparing like for like, yeah? So if you've got someone who's had the shit beaten out of them, irrespective of gender, they should not be able to keep going for as long as someone who hasn't, logically, yeah? So, for me, this is like, yeah, he might expect that a woman is going to last longer than him, but not if, Fanar.
Yeah, just really... phrasing, are we not doing phrasing anymore?
Oh, my brain's broken and you've had whiskey and I've had cider, so, you know. Anyway, point is, and this is not smutty, she's very recently had the shit kicked out of her, yes?
Mm-hmm.
She should not still be okay.
Yes.
Yes?
I agree, yeah.
Right.
Move on.
Next point, again not smutty, he should be worried about this.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Yes, right, got that. Sorry, alcohol lots. And then I like the fact that you've got this brief interaction with Ellen wrapping her legs around Tigh, and Baltar comes along, and she's like, "Oh, hello." She's like, "Oh, hello." And Tigh is not happy. And then Six appears and just gives all the fucking evils. And I just like that Six does not like Ellen.
Well, she says, you've got to keep your eye on her. It's a suspicious view rather than competitive view.
I don't know. It's also a sort of don't like, in the same way we've seen the don't like. Sharon, I think.
I don't know. I think it's a bit different with this one.
But yeah. And then you have this funny raider, and Kara's like, I think actually he's been playing with us. And then suddenly it becomes clear it's on a suicide run. But before then, the moment Kara says, I think he's been toying with us, Tigh is like, launch fighters. Just do it. And you get this very brief look between him and Leodama, and Leodama just picks up and goes, launch fighters. And so he starts the suicide run, but the fighters intercept and stop it before that happens. And Adama appears and goes, whose call was it to launch fighters? And Adama says it was the XO.
Apollo says.
Sorry, yes. Well,
he is Adama, but yes, it gets
yeah.
confusing. Let's stick with Apollo for him, yes.
Apollo says it was the XO. And Adama's like, good call.
Yeah.
And he's like, it was the hunch. He's like, yeah, good call. And he saved the ship. And then you have this weird conversation as they're walking downhill somewhere, but I'm not quite sure where. You've got Six and Bloke. What number is Bloke?
Oh, thank you for asking me that. I've got these all written down now, because you keep asking me these bloody things. Doral is number 5.
Thank you. 6 and 5 makes 11. Walking down the hill, and he's looking at her going, this bothers you. It bothers you that Halo feels enough. Do you know what I mean? For her.
And the look on her face.
I know.
Tricia Helfer, brilliant that scene.
Fun,
She just plays the pain.
Yes.
And then she recovers her composure and carries on.
Yeah, but it's
really good.
you can see it. Then you have this lovely scene between Adama and Tigh, and
you do your job good.
Yes.
Good grief! Is that the best phrase you could come out with? It was that's up there with "You make my planes fly" from the previous episode. Adama's got this lovely line on very primitive speech.
It's like a fucking pack-led.
Yeah, he's a bit, isn't he? Yes.
You make us go.
You make us go. You are good.
But I like the scene though, because he's like, well, why you thinking Ellen's a silent and whatever, and he's like, look, she's bad news for you.
Yeah.
I need my XO. And he's like, what made you say that about earlier about the fighters? And he went, a hunch. And he's like, it's a bloody good hunch. I need you. I need my XO and I need my friend. And I just was like, oh. Yeah.
I need you more than you need her, basically.
Yeah.
And he kind of agrees as well, which is sweet. So.
And then you have this whole query over, bearing in mind we know he fudged boomers, what did her test really say?
Yes, Boltar's very sus at this point, isn't he?
And then he's away with the fucking fairies.
It's a wonderful final shot. So you've got like Adama and Tigh on one side, and the President and I think is it Apollo on the other side, and then you've got Boltar in the middle swivelling his chair with a look of bliss on his face, and you think, is he just spunking up as he goes round like that? Is that not going to give the game away slightly?
Oh.
Anyway,
ew.
happy place.
He's in his happy place.
He's definitely in his happy place.
Bloody hell.
So it's a funny old episode, this one, isn't it? Because it's not bad.
No.
But the broad comedy just doesn't quite fit. There are times, particularly with the music, where it's played too much for laughs and they need to draw it in a bit. So, the stuff that's worked before, it's generally been the Boltar stuff. And I'm sure they can do comedy with the other characters as well, to an extent. But to try and do an entire comedy... Whereas Trek could do that quite nicely. So you get your trials and tribulations. Trek could do light and airy, and because they're living in a far more utopian society. Here, always in the background you've got the fact these are the last few surviving human beings. They can't really be laughing and joking too much because it plays
like
down
when
the
they
seriousness of the situation.
It's like towards the end of DS9 when they tried to have comedy episodes that didn't work because there was too much else at play.
To an extent, but as I say, Trek was able to do it a lot better than Battlestar can, and because it just doesn't work with the grimness of the situation. And I say, it's not like they can't have comedy at all, because there's been some really funny Boltar stuff leading up to this, hasn't there?
Yeah.
But they can't do an entire comedy episode, unfortunately.
I also think there's certain characters that comedy doesn't work for, and I don't think it works for Adama.
No, and Apollo as well,
Yeah.
interestingly. They're too pally in this episode for the sake of comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think also I'm not convinced comedy can work with Tigh, but
Yeah.
I think with Tigh,
But it's more sort of black comedy with Tigh.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that doesn't work with some of the others.
And the stuff around him and Ellen is fine. That sort
Yeah.
of comedy works, again, because it's black
Yeah.
humour. But it doesn't work with Adama particularly doing the comedy shtick at the camera. It's ironic, because I think he directs it really well.
Yeah.
But I just don't think his particular character suits comedy particularly well.
No, and Lee for me is just right in the cringeworthy.
Yeah, no.
Really. But the thing is that if you think about the situation Lee is in, the cringe makes sense. It's the comedy that doesn't.
Yeah. But also the Caprica scenes then, very jarring.
Yeah.
So you switch from comedy to the desperate situation they're in those sewers or whatever it is they are, and it's like, it's just like from a different series, being shoehorned in.
It seems weird.
Yeah.
I do think the comedy in Rosalind can work.
Yeah, no, she does a very sort of light sort of comedy, yes. But again, she's a bit too on the nose in this one, really.
Yeah. But for me, most of it was cringeworthy rather than funny, apart from the Baltar stuff.
Yeah.
And I have to say, with the Baltar stuff, when Starbuck comes in and finds him having a wank, I love that she's just so deadpan.
Yeah, she just looks at him like, what the hell are you?
Yeah.
Which is an honest reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, and why does he not fucking lock the door?
The door, for heaven's sake. Well, there's nobody in the future lock doors. We had this with Trek, we've got it with Galactica.
Yeah. Door
So,
locks are a thing.
Not an awful episode, but not the best, I think it's fair to say.
For me, I would describe it more as a mixed bag. There were bits about this I actually really liked, but there were bits I really didn't.
Yeah.
So that, for me, is a better description, is mixed bag.
Mm-hmm. We've heard from Dory. Why is Gaius not receiving mental health advice? Especially after Starbuck walked in on him with his trousers down, so to speak.
Yeah.
Why has he not been sectioned? Is that what you're trying to say, Dory?
Yeah.
Ellen Tigh is highly annoying. No wonder Tigh is burning a hole in her photo. She is also acting very much like Six. I can't believe she's not Cylon. This had quite funny but cringeworthy scenes. There's the word again.
Oh, yes.
Alongside others that seemed awfully serious. Indeed,
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work, does it, that
No,
juxtaposition?
no.
Yes. Thank you, Dory.
Thank you.
Also, I said juxtaposition without slurring it incredibly badly, so I'm quite proud of myself at this
Well
point.
done. Open me a cider.
Okay, yes, miss.
Tar. And we've heard
By
from
your command.
We've heard from Sampo and Yona. As mentioned last time, we found it annoying that Rosalind actually appears to consider that Adama is a Cylon. But to be fair, Adama being difficult about taking the test is quite silly as well. One would think he'd be happy to lead by example and voluntarily take the test first.
And all those coded transmissions and him travelling, it does make it look very suspicious, doesn't it?
Luckily, the whole "is Adama a Cylon" appears to end in the middle of the episode. When Rosalind finds out why Adama's acting strangely, she quite sensibly seems to drop the whole thing. Most of the episode revolves around Ellen Tigh, who I keep reading as Thigh.
Ellen's thighs.
An extremely annoying character, admittedly by design, and most of the characters think she's annoying as well.
Yes.
But she's almost so annoying it starts to affect our enjoyment of the show. Not much, but a bit. The scene where she tries
There
to...
was that one point where you said, "Oh, somebody please punch her."
Yes!
That was at the dinner table.
The scene where she tries to play footsie with Lee is straight out of a bad comedy and fits pretty badly with the overall tone of the show.
Yes.
She appears to be a complete sociopath, and it's difficult to see what Tigh sees in her.
Yeah.
Humour that does work is Baltar agonising about the Cylon detector, calculating the number of years it will take him to test the whole fleet, as well as his test being constantly interrupted. And Starbuck walking in when he's doing his exercises was gold. But did that get us thinking, or does he actually physically feel 6?
Yeah.
Even when he isn't inside his mind palace.
Yeah, it's the thing. Is he actually... Yeah, it just doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Because it could get quite messy.
And we did talk a bit about how the physics of such a relationship might work, but best not repeated here.
Yeah, it's the sort of discussion you don't have over the dinner table, is it?
Yeah. It's also a bit strange that Baltar won't reveal any Cylons he might find. He says he keeps things simple, but one would think he'd feel safer with no Cylon agents running around.
Yeah, but they might come after him if he reveals they're Cylon agents. I think that's the level he's working at.
By the way, Yona, the first timer, is absolutely sure Ellen is a Cylon.
Well, they are laying it on thick with this one, it has to be said, but I honestly can't remember all of the others.
Ellen is a Cylon. Ellen is a Cylon.
No.
No. Okay. The B plot is the Cylon raider that's apparently crippled. Or is it? Taking into account that even Cylon fighters appear to play mind games, I'm not sure comparing them to an animal is really accurate. Last observation, and a nice bit of world building, it seems the Galactica has organised a dating area in an observation now for people to spend time together. They need to make all the babies, don't they? I bet that's part of Rosalind's plan.
Yeah, they're piping through porn music. Bow, bow, bow.
Brown chicken, brown cow.
Yeah, but a bit of
Barry White.
Barry White, that's what they need for that, yeah. It's getting old.
Living their love. Taking into account that all the ships are crowded, it's clear to see the need for such an arrangement. So an okay episode, but the enjoyment was lessened by how annoying Ellen was. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Watching it for the first time, or when, like me, there's a whole fuck ton you can't remember, you're like, it would make sense if she was a Cylon. And then you're like, she's so annoying. Would they really do that?
Yeah.
Is she not just a bitch? And it's like, every time you think you're going to go one way, you then up going the other way, because you're just like, no, they would not be that obvious. Because, do you know what I mean? Yeah.
We've heard from Jeff. I remember this one pretty well from the original broadcast, and how odd I found it at the time. I was quite eager to see it again now that I've learned that it was meant to be a comedy. There are definitely effective comedic scenes, classic farcical and misunderstandings, and inopportune revelations. Stop using these big words, you bastard. However, it jars strongly with the darker elements already present in the narrative, and seems especially out of place when it cuts back to Halo and Sharon running for their lives on Caprica. Oh yes, they just so out of place, aren't they? Ellen Tigh's an interesting character, which is a polite way of saying that she seems like a terrible person. Oh yes. Oh, we know people like that, though.
Yeah.
She is most definitely a social gadfly. Ooh, there's a phrase. Stirring up trouble at every opportunity. It is interesting that she seems to see right through the lie about Earth, so despite her other negative behaviours, she is at least very perceptive. Oh, yes, she is, yeah. If nothing else, this episode makes Saul Tigh's character make a lot more sense.
Yes.
And even justifies his continued presence as EXO. It's an odd duck of an episode. Not enjoyable, though, he says.
Okay.
Okay, so he's gone on that side of things. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I enjoyed it far more the second time, but the second time I was fueled by whiskey, so that might have affected my impression of it.
Yeah, but then maybe that makes sense of why Tigh drinks so much. That's how he tolerates his wife.
Yeah, so suddenly it all makes sense. Yes. Okay.
Who we heard from? Purry!
Hello, Args. Parry here to talk about Tigh Me Up, Tigh Me Down. This is almost a comedy episode. Kind of unusual for Galactica. I did like the idea. It still uses the paranoia that having human Cylons, that we don't know what all of them look like, can bring to the fleet with obviously Baltar's now working Cylon detector. They're now looking for the first person. Indeed, he's sitting there with thousands of samples, wondering which to test first. There's the standoffishness, again, the reference from the last episode where Rosalind wants Adama tested first, just to, so even though she didn't believe Leoben, there's definitely a sense of doubt there. So, yeah, that was quite interesting and quite telling. But of course, the main suspicion is Adama's acting weird as well, and it's because he's found Ty's wife, who's mysteriously appeared. Oddly enough, yes, that does scream Cylon. But by the end of the episode, she passes the test. Maybe because Baltar kind of realised that every Cylon tested is reliant on Baltar actually saying whether the result's right or not, and so far he's lied on the one test we've seen him do, so basically every test is inconclusive. It also means, and I'm not sure if Baltar realises how much power he has, because in essence, if anyone ever ticks him off or threatens to make his life uncomfortable, he could just say, I've just tested their blood, Cylon, and get them out of the way. And one of the other things with Baltar is, you'll probably be right, because he seems to have a knack for that. The Ellen Tigh stuff's quite fun. I did like it's again good for the Tigh-Adama relationship, this idea that Adama was saying, look, the man needs his wife, he's in love, but she's a horrible influence on him, and that he's been better since, frankly, he's not had her to deal with. He's improved, compared to the Tigh we saw at the beginning of the series, he's beginning to sharpen up. You can see he poured away his last shot, and it was that kind of idea of, he's a bit disappointed himself that it took him this long to do it, but he did actually, quit drinking, only for his wife to come back with booze. The dinner scene's fun. I think it's probably the closest that Adama and Rosalind have seemed in the last thing. That was almost like a couple and their son, having just got rid of some very annoying dinner guests. Adama, Rosalind, and Lee are all chatting. I find that quite fun. And yeah, it's just an interesting bit of dynamic. What I also liked at the end was when Tigh chooses to launch the fighters, and I did like Adama saying, no, it's not, because you got the impression that Ty's only around because basically Adama covered for him. That was kind of the unwritten and sort of unsaid stuff, that basically when the ship was going, Adama was gone, Tigh was gone, and Tigh, frankly, was only holding out because he was in a museum. And I did like Adama saying, no, you're good at your job, and I need you good. So, and you're also my friend. So I just like that. So yeah, this is never going to be one of the classics, the ones that people go and hunt out to look at. But a perfectly good episode, and actually quite enjoyable. And it's always nice to have a bit of fun. One of the bits that still makes me laugh is when Starbuck walks in on Baltar. Well, it's kind of hard to describe what he's doing. In his head, 6, but what it looked like from the outside was something entirely different. And Iona was actually watching it with me, and she did say, she'd have been at the point, if she was Starbuck, she'd have said, I'm closing this door, I'm going to count to 10, and when I come in, your trousers will be on, and we won't mention this ever again, okay? Because, but again, Baltar does provide a lot of the humour, but it's nice to actually let Tigh, like a few other people have the humour ball as well. So, yeah, overall, decent episode. So I'll be back shortly to talk about, one matching a classic series name, The Hand of God. Until then, bye for now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, bye. I like that phrase, almost a comedy episode.
Yes, that sums it up quite nicely in some ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're right that although it's not officially presented as such, it kind of is Adama and Rosalind as a couple having a dinner. It's just that the reason they're a couple is she's the president and he's the leader of the military, rather than... But that's kind of how the dynamic plays out, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
With Apollo as the awkward son.
Yeah. And I think you're right that particularly Starbuck has clearly thought that Ty's only there because Adama lets him be. And you as the viewer could think the same. And then his actions in saying launch fighters shows why Adama trusts him and why he
can be on the ball.
Yeah, and so it creates the impression in my mind that he was a first-rate XO. who may well have got his own command had he not then developed a drinking problem. Shows what he's capable of. I like the whole, yes, I'm closing the door,
Yes.
counting to 10.
The look on Starbuck's face is priceless. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We've heard from Drew and Tracy.
This is our feedback for Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down.
So, what do we think of this one?
Yeah, it's good actually.
This
not
was
bad.
really funny.
We was giggling away at lots
Yeah.
of different bits.
And it's a very serious topic, but there was some real comedic moments
Yeah,
in this.
it was. Yeah,
really
it's
was.
a funny episode.
So when Adama, his reaction to when the president says, you should be tested, and he's like, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, that was very good. That was the start of it, definitely.
He says, excuse me, that really made me laugh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then when Boltar was having his imaginary nookie with Six, and
And
Starbuck
Starbuck comes
walked
in,
in,
that
yeah.
was really funny.
yep,
And then at the end, when he's swiveling around in his chair,
yes,
obviously she's sitting on him, and he just looked like he was in the loony bin,
Yep.
didn't he? Yeah, there were so many funny moments in this. The dinner party was just hilarious.
it was. Yeah, and at the end when they was all in the in his lab,
In the lab,
and
bickering. Oh,
yeah.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in this.
definitely.
Ellen needs to back the fuck off Adama.
She's trouble, isn't
She
she?
is
She's big
nasty.
trouble.
Yeah. And to be fair...
Well, not Adama. I was just thinking more poor Ty. She's
Well-
just like a bad influence on him.
Yeah, but Lee, in the dinner party, when she sticks her... I mean, I know that obviously it was a bit of a shock, he wasn't expecting it, but Lee's a man of the world, or the space. So
Yeah.
he's kind of... He's been with a woman before. He knows when he's being come onto, so he didn't really need to freak out like that, did he?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, isn't it? Under the table in a dinner
Well,
party.
she just batted her leg away.
Mm.
Adama, I love him.
Yeah, he's great.
I love him. He loves Ty.
He does, yeah.
And we
at
know
the end,
Ty is
yeah.
a bit of a tit in this.
Yeah.
You know, I like you without the cup and all that. But he just, I love the friendship.
Yeah, it's good. They've got a close bond,
Yeah.
haven't they? Which
Yeah.
is great.
Not very much from Hilo and Sharon today.
No.
At first I thought they were in a sewer.
Yeah, the
I'm
water
like,
was a bit clean
You
though,
literally
wasn't it?
just, you're like supping in that water there, Hilo, when like you're collapsed. And is there no like, I mean, I know she's got all these excuses, but he's like, you're like a machine, you just keep going, you don't stop. And she's like, it's the
Yeah.
adrenaline. At some point, he's got to kind of say, hello,
Yep.
what's going on?
Yeah, not yet though.
I put classic Boltar today. That was so funny. I laughed so many times at Boltar.
Yeah, he very funny, definitely,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
like we're saying, the whole episode had a lot of amusing stuff in
There's
it.
a lot of good timed humour.
It was, yeah, it's
we're
good.
probably not supposed to be finding the humour in these episodes, you know. We're
Oh no, this
probably
was
supposed
obviously
to be
definitely done as a
picking
bit
it
of a
apart.
one with a lot of comedy, and I thought it really worked well. Actually, it was good.
What's the young couple, Billy and
Oh, Duella?
it could be the chief. I thought that was a bit harsh because she's obviously spilling, and I didn't know at first whether she was spilling to see if he was actually going to report back to the president and be like a spy, or whether she was just saying it because that's what she is. I mean, if you're part of the chief's crew, like
Yeah.
he's like.
Command crew kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but you're like almost like his personal assistant. You don't tell people shit.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so.
She
Yeah,
shouldn't have said that.
maybe not.
So,
Hmm.
but what was that? Were they in kind of like a bunker for half an hour, and they get to like
Yeah,
because they all looked like they was on a
Not-
date,
not
didn't
too
they?
sure,
Like they were all
yeah.
coupled up, and they were like having a bit of as your
Not
father.
too sure what it was.
Oh,
But yeah, good episode.
Yeah, I really
enjoyable
enjoyed
stuff.
it.
This
Yeah.
not actiony, but entertainment.
really enjoyed it. Yeah,
Yep.
did laugh more than I thought I would.
Yep, good stuff.
Indeed. Anyway, have another one.
Okay,
Take it easy. See you later.
bye.
Bye, see you later. Yeah, Duala, with her loose lips, I think that's a fair comment. She's been slightly undisciplined there, isn't she?
Yeah.
But yes, they're on the observation deck, is where they're at. So they get good views of space and stuff.
Yes. And, yeah, Halo so should have twigged.
Yes, it's getting a bit silly at this point. And also the whole thing about him, hang on a minute, I shot her when he looks at 6. Or
Yeah.
that Boomer shot her. It's like, okay, put 2 and 2 together, Hilo. Please, hurry up.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, Ellen needs to back off, but you kind of get the impression she's not the sort of person who does.
No, that's not very likely, is it? No.
No.
It was definitely written as a comedy episode. That was their
Intention,
indeed. And yet the Adama-Tigh friendship does work very well in this. You get some more sense of why they're together.
Yeah. What did the Llama God make of this?
Well, it's been said in previous feedbacks that thus far, this reboot series of Galactica hasn't actually had any duff episodes so far, and that was indeed true until now. I'm not going to be that cruel, to be honest, despite the fact that they've gone for a very tonally jarring attempt at making a comedy episode. This is still a very good episode, very well acted by all involved, and it does some interesting things. Right off the bat, the whole way that they treat the is Adama a silent or not question, and his refusal to get his blood tested, and Rosalind playing with him. The fact that they actually treat that as a comedy in some respects makes it a bit more jarring and a bit more concerning than if they played it straight, because by this point in the series we've gotten used to Galactica being played very straight and very dry and very dark. So the fact they're actually going with humour on this one is very unsettling, which I think in some respects really suits the story well, especially if you consider that maybe this episode is being told from the point of view of Colonel Tigh. The main thread of this episode really is, though, or continuation of the question is, who is human and who is Cylon? As we do have to wonder, is Adama a Cylon? It doesn't seem very likely at this stage. It seems a lot more likely, really, that Ellen Tigh is a Cylon as well, but she isn't. Or is she? And that's the sort of dilemma that we're left with at the end of the episode. It throws up an awful lot of questions, especially concerning behaviours. If you look at, as we've discussed before, about both Sharon down on Caprica and pretty much all the Sixes, one of their modus operandi is to infiltrate by seduction, and that's exactly what Helen's trying to do here. Pretty clumsily, yeah, but, you know, there's different ways of seduction, and if she was indeed to be a Cylon, then, yeah, Tigh was an easy mark, clearly. Of course, we're told at the end of the episode that no, she's not, but then we get the nice double whammy of Baltar admitting to the Six in his head is that he's not necessarily giving the right results, and is his test even working? Who knows? Only Baltar knows, and he ain't telling anyone else, and so long as they're keeping him in a position of relative importance and keeping him fed and alive, then yeah, he's going to keep telling them this thing's working, which does raise the larger question, do we know who's a Cylon yet? Probably not. This episode also adds some depth to the character of Tigh, in that we learn some of the reasoning behind why maybe he is the way he is. I mean, yeah, sure, we've seen him putting the cigar through the picture of his ex-wife before, but we start to find out a bit more about that, and crucially we discover that when he's actually needed, he can come through, where when the Cylon Raider does the suicide run, he's the one who makes the call. He can still be trusted no matter what's going on, so this is what makes him such an invaluable character, and even if he has his flaws and his penchant for a breakfast of whiskey, then yeah, he's still going to be able to act when it actually matters. We also learn a couple of nice things about the Galactica in this episode. We got our first clear look of the upper level of the CNC, which is just really nice, because it really gives that set more space to breathe, and is kind of reminiscent of the original Galactica's set, that had the pointlessly moving central tower and the pit around it, and this is more of a catwalk around the outside, but still, it gives it a lot more depth and drama, and that's a really nice little design element there. And we also discover that the Galactica doesn't have 10 forward, but it does have a make-out room in the front, so yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, it's meant to be an observation deck, but clearly everyone's going there to make out. Yeah, hopefully those seats are wiped clean. We also learned that Cylon Raiders can jump. I didn't remember seeing that before, so this is a new thing if the Raiders can themselves jump individually, so I don't think Vipers are capable of, so that gives them an edge over the Colonial fleet, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future. And we also learned that this iteration of Ambrosia is green, so creme de menthe, or a mixture of some sort of creme de menthe and absinthe. Yeah, interesting, tasty. I mean, I like absinthe, but I don't know if I want to mix it with creme de menthe, so Ambrosia looks interesting to be sure. In terms of the stuff that's happening on Caprica, this is clearly not part of the plan now, with Sharon going on the run with Hilo. Clearly she's developed two feelings for him too much, and I think the frustration from the other Cylons shows that this wasn't actually part of their plan. Her going on the run was not a part of the plan, and it also has them asking questions for a change. In the past we've had Six's question, are you alive? Here it looks like she's actually regretting the fact that Sharon is actually feeling something, so are they starting to have their own faith in their own superiority questioned? It'll be interesting to see how this turn of events between Sharon and Hilo affects not just them, but also Cylons around them. So yeah, so this episode does, whilst it tries to be a little piece of lightweight fluff, just to maybe change the mood, this episode does actually work in furthering the story and giving some interesting insights to some of the characters. So yeah, it's still not a bad episode, as ever, especially with Baltar being on fine form. The final shot of him just spinning around gleefully in his chair as the camera pulls back and we see whatever else is going on, then yeah, that's just absolutely wonderful. Let's see if they keep that same sort of lightness of touch in the next episode, shall we?
Thank you.
Hey, y'all.
That's an interesting take on the whole 6-5 exchange. That is Six beginning to question the idea that the Cylons are superior, because she's clearly troubled by the fact that Hilo and Sharon are experiencing something that she isn't, and then Doral says, well, we saw when he was being interrogated how he continued to feel for her and how that empowered him, and she's troubled. And it does make me wonder, is it more than just she's jealous? Is she questioning Cylon's superiority?
Don't know. But I do prefer this one to Acts of Contrition. For me, that so far was the lowest point of the season, just because...
Oh, she's the episode names. Which one?
It's the one that darted about all the way with the timeline, so it started...
Oh, that was bollocks.
Yes, exactly. So this is better than that bollocks.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We've heard from Andrew.
Says something about this version of Gaius Baltar that in one episode he can be part of a very high-stakes, heavy storyline where his reputation, even his life, are on the line, and in this episode he's fapping in a lab. I don't know what it says. Can you imagine John Colicos doing that? Did you just imagine John Colicos doing that? Anyway, apropos of that scene, wherein we're reminded of the value of locks on doors, something caught my eye, other than the obvious. Baltar and Six talk about how long it's going to take for all the tests to be performed, and they give a number in days, and they give a number in years, and if you divide the number of days by the number of years, it's 365 days a year, which is a coincidence. But there were 12 planets in the colonies. Which planets' years are they using? Which planets' days are they using? So this episode was directed by one Edward James Olmos, and I'm in two minds about his direction. There was the occasional quite interesting shot, like the Dreidus console descending from the ceiling, or there's a big sort of camera move around the Raptor as it lands in the hangar bay and Adama comes out and Ellen Tigh comes out. But there were a lot of giant close-ups of people's faces in this, and if you're doing a kind of farce episode, which I think this is meant to be, you don't want close-ups. Close-ups aren't funny. Unless you've got someone like Rowan Atkinson doing something funny with his face. Close-ups aren't funny. But anyway, Ellen Tigh. What to make of Ellen Tigh? I think basically she's portrayed as a wrecking ball. She's the sort of element of chaos that whirlwinds in and threatens to knock everything over and steal your booze. But there's a sad story there between her and Saul. He wasn't there a lot of the time. And so she, according to rumour, by Adama's account anyway, went looking for affection elsewhere. And maybe she found it elsewhere. And maybe somewhere in there was an element of making him jealous so he'd come back. And in the end, neither of them was really happy in their relationship, and the only way that they could cope with it was through alcohol. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that the episode does present her as being a bit of a threat, actually. Because when Saul Tigh is on his game, when he's on his best day, he is a good first officer. He makes good, prudent decisions. And here comes Ellen, who, as Adama says, was a bad influence on his life. What effect's that going to have on the first officer, or executive officer, I should say, that Saul Tigh can be when he wants to be? But that said, I think Kate Vernon utterly storms it as Ellen. She's absolutely the centre of every single scene that she's in, and that's no easy task when you have Edward James Olmos and Mary McDonnell in your cast of actors. When they're in the scene, and Ellen is the one that you're looking at, you know you've got somebody really good for the role. And there's also a very easy sort of physical intimacy between them, Ellen and Saul. You know, they seem very comfortable, physically close to each other, touching each other. I don't know if these two actors knew each other much or at all before this, but that sort of very easy physical closeness really helps sell them as a couple. On Caprica, Sharon is struggling with the plan that the Cylons have for Hilo, much like the Sharon on Galactica struggled with finding the water and everything. One wonders if finding difficulty with their directives is a feature of this particular Cylon model. And Six holding back tears at the end was unexpected. Maybe an inkling that her relationship with Baltar wasn't all just to get access to the defense mainframe. Maybe there was something actually deeper there. And I think it takes her by surprise a bit, actually. And to conclude, Baltar's Cylon detector now passes everyone as human, so it gets the show out of the problem that the Cylon detector poses to this sort of ongoing drama of who is a Cylon, who isn't a Cylon. Thing just gives off a green light for everybody. You still don't know who is Cylon and who isn't. Other than Boomer, obviously. But there's the added wrinkle that maybe Boltar does. So those are my thoughts on Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. I'll be back later to talk about the Hand of God. Bye for now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure the detector passes everybody as human, but Boltar does. I think there's a subtle difference there.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with Sharon.
Yes, already, and who knows what the actual result was, but we only get Boltar's version of it for this one, that Ellen is not as Island.
Yeah, so we genuinely don't know. With Sharon we know, with Ellen we don't know. And I think it's because he was worried. So he could be that she is, and he's worried about risk of exposure because of what they've got on him. Or it could be that she genuinely is. And that's we don't know. We're not sure. The doubt has deliberately been sown in our minds. In terms of which planets, days and years they go by, they don't have star dates like Star Trek. So I don't know for definite, but I'm wondering whether they designated Caprica as like the prime planet, and they are going by Caprica.
Heaven knows. Heaven knows.
Or maybe they've come up with a median or something, or a mode. I don't know, or some other kind of average. We're not told, but it isn't a star date. So there is a system that they have, and we're not told what it is.
Yep, Kate Vernon definitely storms it. She's fantastic in this.
She is.
And why does not Boltar lock his door?
Don't know.
Mystery.
He should. He ought to. What does Daria make of this one?
Good evening once more. Emma Daria back again with Battlestar Galactica 1.8, Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. And oh dear, did the writer take on a Battlestar Galactica job just so they could make that joke? I mean, I would have. Commander Adama says, if I'm a Cylon, you're really screwed. Well, yeah, that'd be the point, Bill. Oh, she really does think he could be a Cylon, and she's sending her pet Billy to Honey Trap Dwala to find out. At least if he goes first, she only has to wait 11 hours. Think about, why does the test now take 11 hours when Boomer's barely took 11 seconds? I love Starbuck's expression when she catches Boltar exercising. So, I totally know what you're up to, but I'm going to allow you that sliver of pride to pretend that I don't. You certainly don't get people walking in on someone going to town on themselves in Star Trek. Not even on Discovery. Mr. and Mrs. Tigh, how did I know as soon as I saw your reunion that you wouldn't be healthy for each other? So just as Mrs. Tigh's putting a foot in it, she's putting a foot in it. But up on top of the table, what does one have for a fancy meal in the Ragtag fleet these days? And speaking of that scene, I think I've got to say that comedy music isn't Bear McCreary's forte. In fact, I think that whole laboratory scene a little later thinks it's funnier than it actually is. I don't know if the show has to be completely void of lighter moments, but this attempt at outright comedy, no. Just no. Credit, though, to Kate Vernon to make me have such a genuine skin-crawling reaction to Ellen. She must be a pretty good actor. Meanwhile, it's like Hilo and Capra Boom are in their own little movie that is just a little chunk of every now and into every regular episode. Well, I will see you all next time. Always looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Yes, there's much less wanking in Star Trek. This is definitely true.
It all happens on the holodeck.
Yes.
When they still don't have any fucking locks on the doors.
There's a lot of him third wanking, but we don't actually see them doing it.
Yeah. Riker and Minuet, anyone? It's interesting you mentioned the time differences between the tests. That Boomer's was quick, wasn't it?
Quicker, but I think the impression was that there was a bit of processing before the actual result came out. So
okay. Fanar.
Really? Anyway, moving swiftly on to the Hand of God.
Fanar.
Don't! Just no.
Take the Tillium from the Cylons. With all respect, this is hardly a time to attack a superior force. It's exactly the time. We know where they are. They don't know where we are. We catch them with their pants down. If we fail, end of game. So we don't fail.
Yes, despite the title, it is not a reference to the original series, even though the there's a vague plot similarities, but yes, taking the fight to the Cylons. But neither of the writers apparently had seen the original episode, so we have to let them off for this one. Rosalind is given a press conference about their lack of Tilium. Yes, that's what it was called in the original series as well, their fuel. She's challenged by reporters on just how serious the situation is and sees snakes wrapped around the microphone. And has, well, something of an episode in front of everyone, presumably as a result of the Kamala. Crashdown finds an asteroid full of Tilium, but Boomer spots it's crawling with Cylons, which is a decent enough teaser. In desperation, Adama decides they're going to take the Tilium from the Cylons, and it kind of sells the seriousness of the situation they're in, that he has to do that. Rosalind talks to Elosia about her visions, and it turns out she's seeing visions from their sacred writings that were said to be given to a dying leader. Elosia asks if she's taking the Pythia. Hey, thank you all. Suddenly it feels like we're in Deep Space Nine territory again, doesn't it? You think about Destiny.
Yeah.
Although Ronald D. Moore didn't write that episode, and didn't write this episode of BSG either, so it's just coincidental this time. But yes, all these, that whole thing about Cisco having visions and then turning out to be true, yeah. Apollo is outlining his plan of attack to Adama, Tigh and Starbuck, using some cool-looking models on a planning board, which is much better than the graphics we used to get in DS9 on the board. I mean, not as good as seeing actual effects. And originally, we would only have seen the models on the board. That's the reason why they came up with them, to save money. But then they realised they had some money left over, so they spent it on actually showing us some of the things going on, basically, which makes the episode so much better. We get some sniping between Tigh and Starbuck, and the commander declares that he wants her to plan the attack, as she's not a conventional tactical thinker. So apparently she's the best pilot, the best shot, the best sniper, and the best tactician in the fleet as well now. Okay. We jump to Starbuck explaining her plan to the president, involving some decoy ships to draw the raiders out, leaving the base unattended. And usually, explaining the plan to the audience means the plan is going to fail. If they fade away just as they're going to explain the plan, you know it's going to succeed. But there's something slightly different going on here, which is nice. Oh, and there's some great military music playing whilst the scene's going on as well.
And I like the little ships.
The little ships are good, yes. Yeah. Tigh and Starbuck go to Boltar for advice, since he's the Cylon expert. Well, he kind of is, but how do they know that he is? As far as they know, he's just able to work out a detector. That doesn't make him an expert on their bases and where to strike, but yeah.
Well, this is what I find odd in terms of the dialogue written, because I could understand them going to him as the chief scientist. Right? And if that's what the dialogue said, everything that happens in that scene would make sense.
Well, make more sense. It still wouldn't explain how he knows so much about Cylon bases, but yeah.
But well, it's not just that. He's saying, they're talking about Tilium, okay? And he then, what he says to them, if you do this with Tilium, it does that. That's what he says, right? Now, that fits with being the chief scientist, right? So in terms of what he tells them to do, if they had gone to him as chief scientist, this whole thing would work.
Yeah.
But what doesn't work is specifically, you're our Cylon man. And then he comes up with stuff that actually is to do with science and not Cylons. That's what doesn't work.
Yeah. Anyway, he turns to the real expert on Cylons, number 6, and she in turn tells him to turn to God for answers. Instead, he feels that he picks a spot at random, but she points out that might be God speaking to him. Use the Force, guys.
Yeah.
Adama points out that Starbuck isn't their best pilot at the moment, at least, due to her leg injury. So
I love this scene. I love that she's lifting these weights with her knee, and so you can see she's exercising, right, to improve her knee, which I like that in continuity. And then he's saying, when you're in the Viper, this is happening and this happening. He's physically adding weights, and he's saying, this is the strain you're putting on that knee. And then she struggles with it, and
then after her leg collapse, he says, well, actually, that was only a fraction of what you've had to put up with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I love this because, it's a really good way of him as a commanding officer to just show her, without criticising her, that she's not up for it. To make it not personal. To make it, this is a fitness test and you haven't passed it. Because he's also given her the opportunity to pass it, in theory. Do you know what I mean? If she'd lifted that, he could have added more weights and could have gone further.
Oh, okay then. Yeah.
Yeah, he could have done, in theory. But also, I really like how this brings home to me as the viewer the physical strain that is put on the pilots. And this isn't, and later on, in the same episode, you get Lee, and he's drenched in sweat. And it makes it more real. This is what you're putting the pilots under. This is what they have to do. It's physically taxing. You'll not pass it. For me, it makes the whole thing more real.
Yeah.
And I like it.
And it's nice that her injury still has consequences.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And that Adama isn't blind to the fact either.
Yeah.
On Caprica, Halo reflects that they haven't seen anybody since Boomer shot the number 6 back in the day and rescued him. It's probably for reasons of budget, to be honest. But he offers Boomer some chili and she vomits.
Well, now, I wondered about this. Now, I've got a question. Please bear in mind in your response, I don't remember the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But this is a genuine question of me not remembering. Okay? What occurred to me was this. Is she vomiting because they've had sex and Cylon physiology is different
Well done.
and she's pregnant?
That's one possibility that occurred to me. The other possibility is that she's feeling sick and nauseous because she's effectively turned against her own race.
Ooh.
So you've got one or two choices there, I think.
Okay. But I'm
you
asking
wouldn't. I mean, obviously they only had Nookie, like less than a week ago.
But she's a Cylon. She doesn't
she's
have
Cylon,
the same
so
biology.
it may happen quicker.
And so that's what. But then, of course, that then raised the question: well, do Cylons have morning sickness?
Well, apparently,
Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But for me, it raised the question in my mind, and this is one of the things. There's bits I do remember, and I'm therefore careful how I phrase things. There's also bits I genuinely don't. Most of this, basically, what I remember is what is already bloody obvious.
I'm
at this
sure.
Stage. Do you see what I mean?
I'm sure it will be explained to us at some point in the future why Boomer is puking.
Yeah.
I look forward to the puking explanation.
Fine. But I don't remember this. I really don't. The only thing I remember...
I'm sure it'll all be brought up again for us.
The only thing I remember is what we already know.
Mm-hmm.
That it's revealed she's a Cylon.
What I can understand is why she looks so good after she pukes. Because nobody looks that good after they puke.
But she's a Cylon.
No, even Cylons, I'm sure, have got a bit, carrot wedged under their nose, Yeah. Anyway, Adama...
Or they've destroyed their husband's phone.
Yes. Adama says he's got something for his son that belonged to his grandfather. And I'm expecting to see a watch at this point.
Yeah.
He's stored up somebody's ass. But it turns out to be a lighter. We get some very Lord of the Rings bagpipe music.
Yeah.
Which I'd forgotten just how Lord of the Ringsy the music was at this point. And it's underscoring what would be a very mushy scene between Adama and Apollo if it wasn't for the fact that Adama doesn't finish off with a cracking line, which is brilliant.
Get some rest. You're gonna need it.
Dad? I'll bring it back.
You better. I'll kick your ass. It's a good lighter.
Halo and Boomer awake to the sound of Centurions, and looking out, he spots a number 6. Something of a shock, since he thought Boomer had killed her, and then they scarper. The Colonial's plan of attack gets underway, with some of the raiders launched at the decoy, but 50 more raiders launch against the Vipers launched to attack the base, so it sounds like it's all over. Somebody whose call sign is Fireball buys the farm. Well, it serves him right for choosing such an apt call sign, doesn't it? May as well call yourself, Instant Death. I mean,
Isn't that a song?
What? Instant Death?
A fireball.
My heart would be a fireball, a fireball. Every time I gazed into your starry eyes, we'd take the path to Jupiter.
Adama orders the strike aborted, and all the raiders turn towards Galactica, and you can see the moment that Boltar fills his pants when he hears the news. But But all is not lost, thanks to this not actually being Starbuck's plan. Because instead, Apollo and his squad launch from the Colonial Movers ship, which is recreated from the original series quite nicely. Lovely touch. The President is not. She didn't know this, but Adama says the secrecy was his decision. The original strike force turns back on the Raiders. This bit doesn't work for me, because they were outgunned before, and then they turn back on the Raiders and suddenly they're able to defeat them. Doesn't work for me, but never mind. There's a fantastic shot with the Apollo's Viper squadron flying low, not like that, over the surface of the moon. It's more cinematic and less documentary style than usual, I can't help feeling. But on the basis it gives a clearer view of the spaceship, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
We see some of the nuggets that were introduced back in Acts of Contrition, which is a nice bit of continuity.
Yeah.
They get fired upon by ground-based defences, launch their weapons at the base, but their guidance systems are jammed and they miss. Apollo orders them to switch off their targeting computers and use the Force, or something, I don't know. Chuckles buys the farm. Oh, Chuckles! We hardly knew ye. Along with another newbie called Stepchild, which is a bit random, but there you go. Apollo has a cunning plan and starts a trench run because there wasn't enough of the Star Wars vibe about this episode. And yes, that was what they were aiming for when they were writing this. Ron Moore makes it clear in the commentary. He flies into the refinery, launching his missiles from within, and it's all fantastically realised. I mean, the effects in this are just fantastic. It's brilliant. Boltar is relieved to discover he was right about what to target, although that also has implications about his relationship with God. And in a lovely moment, Starbuck and the President hug, and there's more bagpipey music for some reason. And much beer is chugged in the launch bay. Kara gives Apollo a stoogie, and he lights it with his father Zippo, throwing it back to the commander, which again is another nice touch.
Like that.
Six tells Boltar what he was doing was in accordance to the prophecy of Pythia, and he's beginning to believe, adopting a rather Christ-like pose as he reflects he's on a mission from God.
Well, me and the Lord, we got an understanding. We're on a mission from God.
Hey, tune!
Yes.
He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Yes. Yeah, he thinks he's seen the light.
Yes. So the writers were briefed to produce a Big Mac, is what they call it, a show with lots of combat. Something that up till now they purposely avoided most of the time to avoid the Cylons seeming weak from being beaten every week, which is understandable. But here they get a little victory, which is nice.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely episode. It's what I'm looking for in a sci-fi show. There's a bit of spaceship battles and nice character bits as well. I mean, yes, it's a bit Star Warsy at times, but that's no bad thing. Star Wars is good. Well, the original Star Wars is good. Yeah. The only thing that lets it down a bit is the bagpipey bits of the score, which I could have done without, but there you go. They've not aged well. I suspect they might have seemed a bit more original and new at the time, but yeah, since Lord of the Rings, less so.
Doesn't Lord of the Rings... Wasn't it around this time? In other words, some
maybe
predated.
Maybe it was the fashion of the time. Yes.
Could be. Yeah, it could be a fashion thing. I enjoy this episode in the main. What I don't like is, to me, it does genuinely seem contrived. I get the point that Apollo comes up with a tactical plan that's by the book and good, and Adama says, yes, but we need something different because the Cylons are going to guess that. So we need someone who thinks differently. And so I brought Starbuck because she's a maverick.
Mm-hmm.
I get that point. But to me, it still seems too contrived that she comes up with a plan.
It is fast turning into... I don't like this phrase, but what's the...
Mary Sue.
A Mary Sue thing, isn't it? Which is curious. I don't like it, but she's just too much of an expert on everything, isn't she?
Yeah, whereas if it was more, thanks Apollo, but you're very... Do they have an academy? Whatever you call it, trained, if that makes sense. You're too by the book. We need someone else. And either... it's Starbuck giving input and tweaking the plan, rather than a totally new one, just a bit of a tweak, I would cope with. Or a different person other than Starbuck, who's coming from a completely different perspective. and you bring them in instead.
And to make this clear, because one of the reasons I don't like the Mary Sue thing is because there are plenty of male characters who are effectively Mary Sues, aren't there? So if
Wesley Crusher.
Well, kind of, yes, yeah. Had Starbuck still been male in this series, I would be equally annoyed that he was an expert in everything.
Yeah.
So it's not a gender thing here; it's a character thing.
It's a character
no
thing.
character can be such an expert in everything,
yeah.
and it still stand up.
Yeah. So the concept that Apollo is too by the book, and you need a different take, and you need to bring someone else in. Absolutely happy to buy that as a concept. My problem is that yet again it is the same character being brought in with the solution.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with it being Starbuck if all she did was tweak the existing plan.
On the other hand, what I do like is the fact that she has a weakness in as much as she thinks she ought to be leading this mission and she's actually in no state to do it, and she is not self-aware enough. So if she'd been like, oh no, I know I can't lead this mission, it must be somebody else, and that would have been even more marks against it.
Or she said, I need to, and then did it.
So it's not that she's
then succeeded.
She's not that she's infallible.
No.
It's just that she's rather too perfect.
It's just too much for one character.
Yeah.
I would like to have seen a different character.
I think it should have been somebody else on the sniper mission way back when on that one, and it should have been somebody else who was brought in for the interrogation because it didn't make any sense. Either.
And then you could still have her as a maverick pilot.
For this one, because this one does work. It's just it follows on from so many episodes where she was the solution to the issue.
I agree. If someone else was the sniper and someone else was the interrogator.
Yeah.
Except that I still think that the reason Adama chose her to interrogate was not because she was the best, but because literally she was spare.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to think that was
still not the best of reasons, but anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, it's too much. What did Doreen make of this? She says, Madam President, there may be trouble ahead. And I don't mean those snakes you're hallucinating. Rostin is fulfilling prophecy? Wow. Starbuck, not the best at several things in one episode. I think I might faint. I'm amazed this managed to make me feel for the people in the command room, giving orders when they're safe and sound away from harm. Okay, BSG, well done. You won this battle, but the war is still on. Boy is Six, or his own imagination, really freaking Gaius out. I did not like his crucifixion pose at the end. I don't think you're meant to like it. I think it fits with his character. I think he is thinking of himself as the Messiah at that point, isn't he?
I think he is.
Yeah,
yes.
so I think you're not supposed to like it. I think he's deliberately having that posture.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to see it that's how he sees himself.
Yeah.
Not that's how he actually is.
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you.
Sampo and Yona have this to say. So the fleet is apparently out of fuel. Even though I've speculated on it before, it does seem to come out of nowhere. So they plan to attack a silent refinery, and of course they need the master strategist Starbuck to come up with a plan. Okay, I'm being a bit unfair, but being the best pilot does at least imply she would also know something about tactics, although her plans up till now have generally included ramming things. Amidst the planning, there are several crises of faith going on. Starbuck is not completely healed yet and is having a hard time being left out of the mission. We do appreciate the fact that her leg has taken weeks to heal instead of being okay in the next episode. Yeah, that is good. The scene in the gym when Adama was adding weights was pretty nasty. I was expecting her leg to snap at any moment, bloody hell, which would have been incredibly stupid. Since Lee is leading the mission, he is having self-doubt, since everyone, him included, thinks Starbuck would be better. But Adama Sr. gives him a sweet pep talk. We really like their relationship at the moment. It seems that the Starbuck search a few episodes ago brought them closer together. Yeah. Also, Boltar is struggling with his role in God's plan. Although he has no idea about which part of the refinery to attack, Six urges him to trust in God, and he basically guesses. Then in the end, when it appears he actually guessed correctly, he genuinely seems to believe for the first time. There have been too many coincidences for him, where his simple belief or non-belief has affected major events. I guess that is the way to convert a scientific atheist. Present enough evidence, and it will change his mind. That's a good point, yeah. It's nice to see a space battle again. Oh, yes. It's nicely dramatic, and I generally did not see the twist in the plan coming. Also, Lee does a trench run and then flies through a tunnel, neatly combining A New Hope with Return of the Jedi. I was a bit confused at the end. Even though the refinery was destroyed, there were still about almost 100 raiders in space against less than 20 Vipers. Yes, that was my point as well. It's a bit unclear to me why they would retreat. There should have been more than enough of them to get rid of the Vipers, even without their base of support, possibly even damage the Galactica. But anyway, we see 4 Vipers destroyed on screen. Most likely there were more, but I can't be sure. So Viper count is 5, meaning they have 35 Vipers left. He's hanging on to this, bless him. A sort of B-plot is Rosalind seeing visions and talking to a priest about them. I joked last time that the side effects of her medication is the ability to see into the future, but in this episode it is established that seeing into the future and prophecies are something that appears to exist in the BSG universe. Or at least people believe in them. It ties in really well with the ending, when Six also quotes the same prophecy, and we have 2 completely different interpretations for it. On Caprica, Halo and Boomer have been running for 2 episodes. Boomer is throwing up, and the only time women throw up on TV is if they're pregnant.
Yeah, that's what I was going
Which
for.
feels quite silly since they only had sex about a week ago.
Yeah.
Although, on the other hand, what do I know about silent physiology?
Yes, yes.
So this was a great and thought-provoking episode. More like this, please. Oh, definitely. This was a fantastic episode.
It's interesting what you say about we see 2 different interpretations of the same prophecy. That very much made me think of Babylon 5, where you get prophecy and one person interprets it one way, and then events play out. With hindsight, you see it another. A few times in Babylon 5.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that necessarily Ron Moore was influenced by B5, but I would think he's a geek. He probably would have been. If, not necessarily directly referencing, but that it would be an influence on his writing, if you see what I mean. And we've heard from Jeff, who writes, "Now this is my kind of episode. I do enjoy the dark character drama, deep moral quandaries and metaphysical questions this show explores. But sometimes I just need to see spaceships exploding.
Yes!
Aside from the thrilling, daring do, there are some nice character moments, primarily the father-son bonding between Bill and Lee, and Starbuck's difficulties in watching the mission from the sidelines. As with most episodes, Guy's Baltar was a highlight. We've seen 2 foxhole conversations to the faith of Red Dress 6 already, but this time it seems his acceptance is genuine. The final shot of Baltar and his mind palace staring up at the sky in a messianic pose was both hysterical and disturbing.
Yeah.
Have I complimented the score in this series yet? If not, it's fantastic. I especially enjoy the song that played over the celebratory scenes at the end of the episode. It reminded me of Joe Strummer and the Mezcaleros version of Minstrel Boy. Great episode, great show, even better podcast. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a fan of the bagpipes, so yeah, not so much. But anyway, glad you enjoyed it.
Yes.
On to Andrew.
Well, they've turned the dial up on the action, haven't they? I think the CGI holds up quite well. This was, 2004, 2005? I think it's still good, now in 2019. I'm sure people will comment on another bow being added to Starbuck's ever-expanding string of talents, that being military tactician, in this case. But I think a similar thing is actually going on with Baltar. He writes the code for defense mainframe systems. He designs biochemistry tests to discern Cylons from humans. And now he knows all about enthalpies of Tilium. These are not fields that overlap. These are all separate disciplines. And I think that even though he doesn't know where to drop the bomb to blow up the refinery, the idea that the characters in the show have that he would know is, as with Starbuck, heaping a lot of competencies onto one person. You would dedicate your career to being a pilot. You would dedicate your career to being a sniper. You would dedicate your career to being a computer programmer. You would dedicate your career to being a Tilium engineer. And maybe that's just a function of there being 40-something thousand people left. Maybe of those number, he is the best qualified person to have the solutions to the problems that people keep bringing to him, in the same way that Starbuck is the best qualified person in a lot of instances. But it does strain credulity that one person could be good in so many different domains. And I think that applies to the intellectual as much as it does to the practical. But other than that, there's some good stuff in this episode. The plot is not complex, but I think that's to the benefit of it, actually. There's the run-up to the mission, and there's the mission. And the run-up is kind of little vignettes. It's nothing really complicated. It's not really a sort of evolving, developing plot. It's Starbuck having to cope with not going on the mission. There's some bonding between Lee and William, which includes an early example of the father and son Adama's theme, which is one of my favourite bits of music in Battlestar Galactica. And there's Baltar's crisis of confidence too, which keeps his storyline going of a higher power looking out for him. Although there's the added spin this time that the divine intervention, if it is divine intervention, doesn't happen because Baltar's begging for his life. It's in support of Baltar doing something for the good of the entire fleet, which for Baltar is progress, really. And then there's the mission, which you play Attack Wing. I've seen it on Twitter. How would you like to play Attack Wing on a board that big, with pieces that big, with sticks to push the spaceships across the board? I'm always impressed when TV shows manage to write interesting tactics. It's one thing writing a character who is purported to be very tactically savvy, but it's another thing to actually write the tactics that tactically savvy character comes up with. It's like a sort of more elaborate Trojan horse that goes on in this. One thing that did cross my mind, though, was when they're initially briefing Roslyn as to the plan, the part of the plan they tell her about. They say that we're going to need some cargo ships, and Roslyn says, ships are yours. Which kind of raises the question of, does Roslyn actually have any sort of authority to do that? If these were military ships or government ships, then she would be at the top of their chain of command, and she could say, go over there and do this. But if these are, privately owned ships that are part of the fleet, to the extent that private ownership means anything anymore, can she just give those to Commander Adama and say, yep, they're yours? Is there a kind of eminent domain thing going on, or is she just very confident that she could go to the captains of those ships and explain the situation and they'll say, yep, okay, you can have our ship, no worries? I'm sure that's the sort of thing they'll never go into detail on in any episode, but it's that kind of question of how does this society work? What are the rules? What are the hierarchies? I find that all really interesting. Anyway, I think that's another disc finished with. We'll be on the last one next for season 1. So, yeah, until next time. Take care, bye.
Bye! Yes, I like the idea of big Attack Wing.
Yeah, no, the models are really well realised, aren't they? And I'd rather like about Star Galactica version of Attack Wing, but there you go. Good. And it's a great way, Ron Moore talks about a lot on the commentary, that this is how they explained what's going on works a lot better with the models than it did actually with the CG effects. I mean, whilst the CG effects are good, you get more of an overview by looking at the big board than you do...
And the people discussing it.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think Andrew's right that it takes really good writing to put across someone's tactics.
Yes, this is a good plan that's well explained. Yeah. I think Baltar's stuff is more bullshit than anything. Yeah, I mean, Starbuck stuff appears to be her own skills, whereas Baltar is just making up as he goes along, and he turns out to be right every time by chance or by divine inspiration.
Yeah, but he
we're not sure which. Yeah. And the CGI does hold up pretty well in this story, actually, whereas it didn't in the previous one. This one looks a lot better,
Yeah. Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
What did Daria make of this?
Happy Halloween, orgs, dogs and sprogs. Daria here, and I think I'm finally commenting on the right episode at the right time. The Hand of God, decoys for Cylons, sleeping in the hay, light has been thrown around. One of the first things that jumped out at me at this one, a detail I like, is that Starbuck has still got her stick and still hasn't literally just jumped straight back into the cockpit. Being someone who broke her own foot earlier this year and is still recovering from it, I like that. She's not like other TV and film characters who get beaten halfway to hell and then sleep it off before the credits. Though I do have to say that means I completely felt it when Commander Adama was piling weight after weight after weight on during her workout. I could feel my own ankle shriveling up in sympathy. Anyway, over on the radiation-riddled old homeworld, Capra Boomer and Halo are now falling in love and sleeping where the horses once did. So is that what they call a stable relationship? Oh dear, though. I know I discredited BSG for its lack of standbys and cliches, but we all know there's only one reason a woman throws up on television, especially if she's just had spine-flaring sex recently. Toward the end, that incidental music is constantly threatening to break into Auld Lang Syne. I know, I bet it's a real folk song or based on one that I don't know, and I just now look proper ignorant on Worldwide Podcast. But, oh well, either way, it does wonders for helping get across the emotion of jubilation and relief of the Galacticans having come so close to just running out of steam, or, well, running out of Tillium, really, and having to pack up the whole shot. There are definitely times you can feel how desperate these people are, and they're not just got replicators that have worked all along and nice clean ships that always work, like in Star Trek Voyager. Anyway, thank you as ever for the podcast. It's always good to hear from you week after week, fortnight after fortnight. I hope you're having a good time over there, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right. It's good to see that it is taking Starbuck time to recover.
Yes. Now that is a good thing. And yes, breaking into Auld Lang Syne at any minute. Yeah, the weird bagpipes.
It was odd.
Yes. But as for the stable relationship
Oh,
pun,
nice. I like that. I like that pun.
Oh, dear.
And another person to go down there, there's only one reason why a woman throws up. Not just me. What llama got make of this?
We was robbed. All right then, we've finally got an episode dealing with the most dramatic and consequential events of recent history, and that is England's defeat in the 1986 World Cup. Oh, no, that's not what this is about. Oh well, still, never know, it might be. All this has happened before, and all this will happen again. Yeah, if you've been paying attention to the Brexit news, then yeah, that's a saying that rings very true, isn't it? No, after the last slightly frivolous episode, this one's a definite change of direction. We're back into how the series had been previously, but surprisingly ending the episode with a celebratory tone, which is interesting and unexpected. I was expecting to plunge straight back into darkness again, but no, we're actually allowed to enjoy the victory of the Colonial fleet just for a few minutes. I'm sure things will get worse before the end of the episode. I mean, we've only got 3 episodes left to the end of the season, so yeah, it's going to go dark soon, isn't it? So we'll enjoy it while we can. So the meat of the episode then, this is just a really great adventure with the Colonials having to take us on base so they've got fuel so that they can actually keep going, and yeah, it's a rollicking adventure. Love how the fact that we've got changing character dynamics, with Lee perhaps letting himself become the fighter pilot more than he's able to have been before, and with Kara becoming more of a leader from the backseat role, and yeah, it's frustration, but we get to see a lot of these characters grow, and that is great. Yeah, sure, it's very Star Wars-esque with Apollo flying straight into the enemy base, but it's done really well, and it's such a satisfying ending when he's able to blow up the base using information that was basically random on the part of Baltar. So yeah, it's a tense moment, that waiting for the bombs to go off, and just a great couple of sequences. The preceding strategy of using a double bluff decoy is absolutely amazing. I love that, and it just goes to show that if humanity is going to survive, then it'll be on their wits. But aside from the action, there's some interesting stuff going on as well. Whilst we've had Baltar potentially hallucinating for most of the series by this point, now we've also got Rosalind herself also getting visions, and maybe visions from God. Now that's an interesting one. We're starting to introduce scripture, we're starting to get into a very mythic side of things with speech about the dying leader, and you could potentially argue that maybe Rosalind did read the scriptures when she was younger and she's just forgotten them, and this is just her subconscious now throwing up that old information again, and of course it's going to resonate because of people who know the scriptures better. It could be that, or it could be something real going on. I think we're going to have to stay tuned to watch that one. What's starting to seem a bit more disturbing at this point, however, is Baltar, and in this episode he truly becomes an instrument of God. His act of randomly picking a location on the base to be their weak spot, which turns out to be a weak spot, as seems to have cemented his conversion to the Cylon faith. Whether or not he was actually being played by God or a god remains to be seen, but this is a further development for his character. And potentially what may be the most interesting thing is actually, and you probably disagree with this, but we'll see, is what's happening on Caprica, as yes, it's Sharon and Hilo still on the run trying to hide in a barn, but of course they get tracked down. We see that the smell of food makes Sharon ill, so yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Sudden aversion to food. Are they going to go somewhere with this? We did have that scene in the previous episode where they did the naughty, but going by the time on the screen, that was only like 10, 12 days ago, a couple of weeks at most, so not nearly time for, as much as I have any experience with these sorts of things, but probably not enough time for her to be any symptoms of anything gestating, we'll say. But then this is TV. We know that this sorts of things when shown on TV don't really adhere to the facts, they go with the drama instead, so this is shorthand we're all used to. So yeah, are they trying to suggest that Sharon's pregnant? Interesting. We'll see where they go with that. And that leads us nicely on to a plan watch. We clearly see that the Cylon's plan is going a bit off plan. Clearly they wanted Sharon and Hilo to hook up and to develop feelings, and as I'd theorised previously, was it just because they wanted to study humanity before they wiped out entirely, or was it for something more? And if indeed something deeper or more internal is going on with Sharon here, then is this a consequence they expected, or is it just maybe a proof of concept? So this will be interesting to see how it develops. And meanwhile, if the 6 in Baltar's head is indeed real, then this week she's actually struck a blow against the Cylons. Or has she? Maybe it's a necessary stepping stone by maybe getting them all closer to where they need to be. There seems to be an implication here that they're going to find the homeworld of the gods, and if there's going to be some sort of showdown between the singular god and the mortal gods, then maybe this is what the Cylons are doing. If they've ditched their immediate parents, are they going to want to try and ditch the parents of their parents? So yeah, I don't know how this is going to play out. It's definitely starting to feel slightly epic. So yeah, at the moment, Cylons still wanting to wipe out humanity, also happy to use humanity for a bit to further their own goals. Interesting. Still not entirely sure what the plan's all about, but yeah, we'll see how we get there. One final thing to say about this episode, because I'm sure it will come up, is that yes, Starbuck needed to have her knees stronger to pull the G's, although, you know, you've got to wonder why they actually have a foot pedal that you've got to maintain, and it couldn't just be a push button or something, but never mind. Is that yes, even though there's no gravity in space, there is still inertia. This is a fact that seems to get missed every time people talk about physics in space, is that yes, they have no weight, but they have inertia. When something's moving fast enough, you have to change direction, you get the forces applied to you. It's pretty much the same as weight. So yeah, cars needed to have to be strong, so yes, you did have to settle that fight. So yeah, in all, still a great pair of episodes. The first one, a little bit unusual, not what we were expecting, but the second one, a cracking, action-packed, and story-developing episode. So yeah, these have been really great, and I'm still looking forward to it. And looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say about it on your podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Science Llama gives science. Excellent.
Yeah.
And yeah, the point is made by 6 that God doesn't have favourites. So she's kind of open to the fact that God might be supporting the human beings at times.
Yeah.
So that's quite nice. That's kind of sort of tied up.
Yeah. And yeah, you've got the Roslin visions from God. Is it the same God? Is it a different God? How is that working? We, as onlookers, we're not sure. And I like that ambiguity. And I like the fact that in this episode you are surprised by those ships in the containers.
The first time you are, yes.
Yes. It does interesting things, I think.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We've heard from Drew and Tracy on this one.
So we've just watched The Hand of God.
Yep.
And your thoughts on that are?
It was good stuff, exciting.
That was a real exciting
it was
adventure episode.
On the edge of your seat stuff.
I wasn't quite going that far.
I thought it
wasn't
was,
quite
yes.
on the edge of my seat, but yeah,
I
very
was.
exciting. If Starbuck is so good,
Yep.
why has she not been promoted before? That was my question initially, because like, you know, she likes to be like a bit of a rogue, doesn't she? Like a little bit of a hotshot. She never wants to kind of take any responsibility. And then that kind of came out later.
I
because
guess
she said she'd never wanted that kind of responsibility.
And also, she's been a bit immature, isn't she? She's not really got maturity.
No, she hasn't. She likes getting out there and like being the hot shot, but she doesn't want to take any responsibility.
look
for
at how she winds up
her
Tigh
actions.
and stuff like that.
She's a bit of a shit with him.
Yes. When they went to Gaius and they said about where, you know, you're the sign-on expert, where we got to hit him, and then you went for like the cutaway and like he was trying to get out of 6, but it wasn't, she wouldn't tell him.
Yeah.
And then he was like, just had to randomly guess. Why didn't he just say, yes, I'm a sign-on expert, but I've never seen a sign-on mining facility, so I don't actually know. Well, why just lie? He puts himself into these bad situations.
Because that wouldn't have fed into the storyline at the end of the episode where he is like the doodah of God, the hand of God. You know, he's like the.
That's what I was on. I would have said, I don't know. I got to be honest. That's always good advice in life. If you're in a situation and you don't know, don't try and blag your way through it. Just say, I don't know.
All right. Not like real life, darling. It's not reality, babe.
Talking about also, like, only for the story, you know, when the plan looked like it was going wrong and then they revealed that there was a secret plan that only Adama and
Apollo and Starbuck knew.
And he said, and like the president says, oh, why didn't you tell us? And he said, oh, it's just force of habit. Like I do that.
Yeah.
That wasn't why. It was purely so that the viewer, us, thought it had gone wrong and they could pull out the bag, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's no other reason to keep it secret from everyone.
Absolutely.
Other than to make it a bit more exciting story.
Absolutely. Yeah. You had to kind of think that they'd failed and then they were like, no, but this is BSG.
Exactly.
It's not going to fail.
So Hilo and Sharon's hotting up now. So we didn't get before.
What do you mean hotting up?
Well, because he now knows that that something's on with Caprica 6.
No, he doesn't. All he knows is that the woman that he saw shot is now walking down the street.
Because we hadn't quite gathered that he didn't know that.
Yeah, we'll
they
discuss
look
that
like
now.
Cylons, but yeah, obviously he didn't, but he knows that something's going on.
But Sharon cannot keep saying, "Oh, we'll sort it out," you know, forever, because it's like,
at some point it's going to catch up.
Yeah, it's going to come and bite you on the arse. I love Adama.
Yeah.
I know I say this all the time, but I just think it's really sweet how his relationship with Lee is just kind of blossoming again now, because it's his son, you know, and like they've got a fractious relationship, but he says all the right things sometimes as a daddy. But it did annoy me when they had the lighter and he was saying about how this was your granddad, and you know, the inscription was like really hard to read. No, it weren't.
I know, we was just like, you could easily read it. It's fine.
What
the prop
fuck
wasn't
was that?
very
No, it
well
wasn't
made.
very good. I was expecting it to be all like scratched.
Yeah, I was as well.
I was like, I can see that perfectly.
Close up of perfect
Joseph
font.
Adama, yeah. Goodness sake.
But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's real good action. After we had some that have not been so actiony, this was like back into the thick of it. Good stuff.
So just quickly, going to the
on.
press with a snake.
Oh, the snakes.
So I thought that initially it was like a side effect of a hallucination of her drug.
Yes. No,
but now they're trying to say that she's like seeing a prophet.
Well, I think it is definitely the drug that's bringing on the visions, but it's tying into it. Maybe. I don't know.
Let's see.
But anyway, great stuff.
Loved it. It was really good.
Yep.
Really good.
Okay.
Have another one?
Yep.
Take it easy then. See
Okay.
you later.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, the inscription isn't hard to read, and it kind of made you wonder whether it had been in the past and it's since been cleaned up, or were we missing something, because it was a bit obvious to me on the lighter. It wasn't hard. So was he trying to say that it had been past tense and he'd since cleaned it up, or was it just bad prop and it should have looked harder to read than it was? Because it wasn't difficult, was it?
I don't think so, no.
No. The doodah of God.
Yes. Let's not dwell on that.
Yeah, no.
But yes, the whole thing about the plan not being revealed to Rosalind is so that it's not revealed to us, so we've got some dramatic tension. Again, that's the whole thing of the whole plan wasn't explained in the beginning, because if it was, it would have failed. So you've got to have some dramatic tension, haven't you?
Yeah, but they ought to have explained it to us, and even if not everybody around the table.
You'd have thought.
Yeah. And in terms of why Starbuck hasn't been promoted if she's this good, I hope it's not the whole Harry Kim Voyager thing. But at this point, it is genuinely unrealistic that she's that good.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all.
What did Parry make of this?
Hello again, Parry here to talk about the Hand of God. Now, there are actually some vague similarities with the original Galactica episode. They both do concern some form of Cylon thingy in the way of the Galactica. In this case, we're running out of fuel, which actually made me think more of the... was it the Return of the Legend? The Legend Returns, the one with the Pegasus in it, and... Captain Kane, Lloyd Bridges, and oh no, not the sir, you want to look over there? That episode actually reminded me a bit of that as well, with the sort of fuel shortage being the issue. And indeed, I suppose while in the pilot they said yes, they've found a refinery ship full of trillium. They have been obviously running a lot of ships for quite a while, and yeah, I can imagine that is going to cause problems. So they're looking for again. Boomer and Crashdown are looking for supplies and find it, but there's a Cylon refinery in the place with loads of fighters, and so they have to form a plan. And I mean, if you think of the plot of the episode, it's actually very simple. The episode basically follows them making up a plan and executing a raid. That's it. That's the plot. There are little bits in between, such as Baltar kind of making his leap of faith in identifying the exhaust port at the end of a long trench that they have to destroy. And a lot of it, there are things like Starbuck not being able to fly, Adama building up these confidence, and they are just nice scenes. I mean, the planning's nice. There is a little bit about prophecy. A lot of the number 12 showing up. Was it, so you've got the 12 vipers and that sort of thing. Are we seeing kind of a numerology thing come through here? 12 colonies. Definitely something coming in there. But we have the main meat of the episode. Like I say, I liked the little moments. I loved the Adama and Apollo scene where he's kind of building up his confidence. He's talking about, the Mark II is a tough ship, and then he says, he gives him his dad's lighter, and there is that. But it's normally a very stereotypical scene. The no son, you can do this because I believe it's you in you because you're my son. And then Apollo kind of goes, I'll bring it back, and he goes, you better do. I'll kick your ass. It's a good lighter. I love that. Just the little bits of levity. We often accuse Galactica of being horrifically grimdark, and it is. But they do put in occasional bits of levity just for that purpose. The raid itself is fully exciting, nice plan, and while I remembered the twist, it's still very tense. I mean, I've seen this episode before. I know what happens, but I was still sitting there as Apollo's kind of climbing up from the refinery with kind of my hands clutched in front of me, going, "Come on, come on!" And you get a proper sense of elation when the mission's a success. Again, well acted. Bear McCreary's music. I know some of you guys have your views on bagpipes, but I do love that sort of tune that was used a lot for the Adama Apollo scenes, and indeed for that final scene. And just to have everyone celebrating for a bit is really nice, actually. You forget how few wins we've had in this series, or few straight wins, or even things that we could call successes. And so to have an absolute out-and-out win is actually quite a good moment, and it's something that definitely the series needed to prevent it becoming too maudlin. And so it is just an episode you feel good at the end of. I mean, one of the other things, there's a series of games I play called Ace Combat, and every damn final mission has you flying through some tight tunnel. That's where I went. I didn't actually go to Star Wars Place for all that. I went there with that. It's just him having to fly through the tunnel at the end. I thought that was it's the your Baltar saying, he doesn't know if it goes anywhere of the sort. I thought that was quite fun. So yeah, it just made for an exciting scene. Something also that we've not seen before is the Vipers sitting that close, doing the terrain hugging and that sort of thing. So yeah, doing some original stuff as well. And like I say, good performances from all. Loved Starbuck hugging Rosalind as well. I just thought it really worked. And yeah, I mean, I'm just off watching the back of the episode. I'm really happy about it. So first thing, just before I say my thanks to you guys, I'd like to say thanks to everyone I met at Destination Star Trek, particularly Drew Tracy, Andy and Martin. All you guys, everyone, if I've forgotten names, apologise, but lovely to see you all, and it was a great weekend for me at any rate. But to the orgs, do keep up the good work. I always look forward to the podcast, and I'll hopefully feed back to the next one. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Yeah, he likes the bagpipes. We don't. Maybe that's
it may be a cultural thing. I
Yeah,
can't feeling
maybe.
possibly. Yes.
Yes.
But that was a nice line from Adama about the lighter. That because I was feeling it was all getting a bit mushy at that point, and then he said, "You better, or else I'll kick your ass." So
Yeah,
it was brilliant.
like that. Yeah. And overall, I like this episode. It's just it wasn't without flaws.
Yes. And like he says, yeah, the occasional bits of comedy is good, and we do get them. It's not all completely deadpan, but the outright comedy episode probably didn't work quite so well.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Cool. Well, thank you to everybody who's fed back this time.
Thank you.
Let's give you the details of what we're covering next time. It's 3 episodes next time.
Oh.
Yes.
Because we're ending the season?
Because we're ending the first season, yeah. So we're recording on Friday the 15th of November. We shall be covering Colonial Day and Kobol's Last Gleaming Parts 1 and 2, which brings us to the end of Season 1.
Right.
Yeah. So all exciting stuff. Time for a plug. I'd like to plug 12 Minutes to Midnight, which is on the Earth 2 network, which is Mike and Dan talking about Watchmen. And they do it panel by panel, so if you're not a Watchmen nerd, probably best avoided. But for those of you like me who enjoy The Watchmen, it's excellent, and I'm learning new stuff every time because obviously I sort of didn't grow up in the US in the 80s, so there's so much I've missed which they're pointing out. So I highly recommend 12 Minutes to Midnight on earth2.net. We'll catch you next time.
Okay.
So say we all.
So say we all.
I wish I was a spaceman, the fastest guy alive. I'd fly you around the universe in Fireball XL5. Way out.
The music at the beginning of this podcast was arranged and performed by Drew Barker.
All other music is used for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
The artwork for Borgcast Galactica was created by Andy Pelastides.
To contact us, send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Contact us via Twitter at rev_org or Borgcastammo. #Borgcast.
Visit our website at galactica.libsyn.com.
Or view images relating to our cast on our Tumblr site, borgcast.tumblr.com.
There's also a Spotify playlist with all our play-out tunes on it.
My heart would be a fireball, cause you would be my Venus of the stars.
Shut it down!
Fire command.